Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. I've been asked, who are the sons of God of Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to verse 4? Now, this one is also a very difficult question, because you find that there are some kind of theologies that are coming out there trying to explain this simple passage. So I'm taking this opportunity to explain biblically what this passage is all about, especially the sons of God versus the daughters of men that we see in this passage. Now you find that when some people are trying to explain, especially most of the scholars in the contemporary Christian setup, they actually believe that the sons of God being referred to here are heavenly angels. So they have a belief that the angels in heaven, they came down and they had sexual relations with the daughters of human beings. And there were giants who were born, who came out as a result of the amalgamation between the angels and the people. This is the popular belief when it comes to this verse. When you go to many Christians in the Christian circles of today, they actually believe that these were what? The angels versus the human beings. But today I want us to look at this passage microscopically and allow all the biblical tools that you can use to decipher, to bring about a meaning to this passage without bias, without prejudice, or preconceived ideas. Now you find that most of the scholars, the reason why they come up with this idea of the sons of God being the heavenly angels, it is mainly because they are influenced by the Canaanite literature. The Canaanite literature, when you go to the Canaanite literature, which is based on mythology, they believed that the sons of God were basically the angels. So some believe that these were fallen angels who came and had sexual relations with human beings. Some they believe that these were good angels. When they were coming to watch over human beings, they lusted over the beauty of the human beings, and they started having some sexual relations with them. But when you follow closely, you find that there is a certain kind of a literature that is being used mainly by the scholars contemporarily. They are taking this from one of the pseudepigrapha books, which is the Ethiopic Book of Enoch. Because when you take a look at that Book of Enoch, which was not canonized, which is an extra biblical source, it explains the angels and their mission. It even goes on to explain the angels coming and having sexual relations with human beings. So because of that, most of the Christians, they've used that as an authentic extra biblical source to cement their belief that the sons of God were actually the angels that were from heaven. So they use mythology to interpret this text. But I want you this moment to allow me to explain to you now without using extra biblical sources. Remember, we are here in this channel, Bones, not Milk, to explain the biblical passages theologically, to allow the Bible itself to interpret what it means before we go to other extra biblical sources. So, when you look at this term, the sons of God, in the Bible, it is not used only in one passage. It is actually used in different passages. If you go to the book of Job, chapter 38, verse 7, it refers to heavenly beings. That is the term sons of God. If you go to Job, chapter 1, verse 6, it actually refers to the representatives of other planets or other fallen worlds. If you go to the book of Exodus, chapter 24, verse 22 and verse 23, it actually refers to Israel, when God is saying, Israel is my son. So the sons of God can actually be Israel. But for us to fully understand this concept, we need to allow the Bible to explain itself in its totality, and also using analogy. Analogy is all about looking at the preceding chapters. The preceding chapters are supposed to help us to interpret it. They are supposed to help us come up with a clear view or understanding of the chapters that are coming. So, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, they are supposed to help us understand chapter 6, verse 1. Because chapter 6, verse 1, it just begins by telling us that men began to multiply on the face of the earth, where we now see the daughters who are being born, and also the sons of God going to the daughters of men. But I want us to go to the book of Genesis chapter 4. If you go to Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, there is something that is very interesting there. When you read verse 26, it says, and to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. What does this statement mean? Men began to call upon the name of the Lord. This statement is very easy, because when you look at the preceding verses of this chapter, they are trying to show us the genealogy of Cain. The people who rejected God, who left their environment where they lived next to Eden and went far to the land of Nod, where they began other civilizations. These people, they defied against the God. They were actually rebelling against the God. And because of that, there were now two groups of people that were living on planet Earth during that time. One of the group was the group of the people who rejected God, and the other group was a group of people who were actually for God. And those who actually for God, they remained closer to the Garden of Eden. But those who rejected God, they went far from the Garden of Eden because they wanted to live their own lives. So these two groups were living separately in a distant, and at the same time, they were having different philosophies and their views on what life is all about. So what was happening now? Many people who were actually on the side of Cain, they began to multiply. And because of that, there was now a need for those who remained in God's side to start seeking the Lord. This is where now the issue comes to say, then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. So when men began to call upon the name of the Lord, actually this is where we now see the issue of evangelism coming into play. So it could be that probably these people who remained with God wanted now these other ones to see that it does not work to keep on following your own ways. Come and follow God. So because of that, the issue of the mission began. This is what chapter 4, verse 26 says. So fast forward to chapter 6, we're now being told that when now men began to multiply on the face of the earth, what happened now in the multiplication? Remember, there is those who rejected God, mainly the Cainites, because it was Cain who brought all this havoc. So he actually influenced some other people, and even some of the sons of Adam. And then here, there remained those who accepted God with their maybe leader who was Seth. So because of that now, these two groups of people, they were living. But because they were now multiplying and they were increasing in numbers, as they were multiplying and multiplying, they were getting closer and closer to each other. So as they were getting closer and closer to each other, there came a point in time when they actually began to mingle. So as they were mingling, something happened. Those who remained worshiping God, they are the ones who are being considered by the Bible as the sons of God. So it was the sons of God versus the sons of men. So it was actually the sons and the daughters of God versus the sons and the daughters of men. The sons and the daughters of men being the descendants of Cain and all the people who had rejected God. So what is happening when they now get closer and closer and they started mingling? Then these ones who were following God, they started seeing the daughters who were from the descendants of Cain and those who rejected God. And they saw an extra kind of beauty that was not found among those that were worshiping God. Now I want you to get this point right. It's not like these people were different. You say these ones were more beautiful than these other ones. But it was because of something else. Because when you look at the kind of people that were coming from the descendants of Cain versus those who were coming from the descendants of Seth, they were actually different in the way they conducted themselves. Now I love the Bible because the Bible, when it gives people names, the meaning is different from today when you just name someone without a meaning. But biblical names, the meaning. When you look closely, from the descendants of Cain, we are given the names of only 3 women. We are given Ada, we are given Zillah, and we are also given Nama. When you look closely at the meaning of these names, you find that, number 1, these names were associated with the issue of taking themselves with jewelry. Number 2, they were associated with painting themselves, like makeup. Number 3, sexual and seductive dances. So it could be that these sons of God looked at these people who would take jewels and they would do some kind of body painting and they would dance seductively, that they were like drawn, they were attracted, they were lured. And actually, they lusted over these women because these ones that they lived with, they did not do those kind of stuff. That is what the Bible says. They saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair. Yeah. The word fair that is being used here, it does not mean that they were naturally beautiful, but it was a kind of an artificial beauty that was put because of what they were doing and the kind of religion that they had now usurped among themselves. Yeah. So when they started going there, and they started now having some sexual relations, and that is where we see the world now coming and getting into where it was until God destroyed the earth. Now, why is it that I believe that the Bible is saying the sons of God are not angels? I will give you the reasons why they cannot be angels, the reasons against the sons of God being angels. Number one, when you look at verse 2 is actually telling us that they took wives. It's not like they just came and they saw women and they slept with them, but it says they took wives, which means that there was some kind of legal marriages that were formed, official marriages. But the question is, could angels come from heaven and start having official marriages with human beings? It does not make sense. If you go to verse 3, it also tells us that God was angry with men, not with angels. Now, if it was angels who took human wives, God was supposed to be angry with both the angels and the human beings. But the Bible simply tells us that God was angry with the men. Why was he angry with the men only and not with the angels? It actually shows us that these sons of God are not angels. They were actually human beings. But they were the people who had remained faithful to God when others left God's presence and started living their own lives. And also some people who now believe that the amalgamation between angels and human beings brought about the Nephilim, the giants. But when you read closely verse 4, it does not tell us that the Nephilim, like the giants, came as a result of amalgamations. It actually tells us that during those days, actually when those people were intermingling and they were marrying each other, it tells us that they were already giants. So giants did not come as a result, as a product of the amalgamation, because when they were amalgamating, giants had already been there. So these giants are not coming in as a result of the amalgamation of angels, but they are already there. And these giants are human beings. The Bible is clear. It tells us that they were men of renown. They are human beings. So they are not angels, because if it was an amalgamation between angels and human beings, the product was not supposed to be a fully human. It was supposed to be maybe a demigod, someone who is a mixture, of divine and human. But we know that it was fully human. Even when God was destroying, he destroyed human beings. So when you look closely, you find that it cannot be. It does not make sense. The Bible does not agree that the sons of God in this context can be angels. The sons of God in this context cannot be angels, but they are actually human beings. And the last point, which is also very important and critical, if you go to the book of Matthew chapter 22, verse 30, it tells us that angels don't reproduce. Actually, when God created, he gave the command of reproduction to men, where he said, be fruitful and multiply, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. But we are never told that angels were also told to be fruitful and multiply. So angels cannot reproduce. According to Matthew chapter 22, verse 30, Christ even tells us that when we go to heaven, we are not going to get married because we live as angels. Why is he saying we live as angels? It is because angels, they don't get married. They don't reproduce. So, if angels don't reproduce, then how is it possible that angels had sexual relations with human beings and there were children who were born? Angels cannot reproduce. So because of these reasons, you find that this verse is very clear. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. It is just trying to show us that two kinds of people that were living in the earth during the antediluvian period, where we are told that there is one group which was faithful to God, and another group which was not faithful to God. And these two groups were separate. This one which was faithful to God were considered to be the sons of God, sons and daughters of God. But these ones who were not faithful were not sons and daughters of God, but they were sons and daughters of men. So because of that, when they began to amalgamate, we are told that instead of the sons of God and the daughters of God influencing these ones of men, the other way around happened. The sons and the daughters of men influenced the sons of God, and they became evil, and the whole world became evil. And when you look contextually, reading the whole chapter 6 in its totality, you can agree with me that everything that is happening in chapter 6, it has nothing to do with the angels. It is human beings. It's human beings from chapter 6, verse 1 to the end. And God is angry with human beings because human beings have become sinful. Even the children who are born, they are also human beings who are so evil. Until God had to destroy. And when God destroyed, who did he destroy? He destroyed human beings, not angels. Angels are still alive up to this very day. They are going to be, evil angels are going to be destroyed at the end. So this passage, when you read it carefully, you can see that it cannot be the angels. Who were the sons of God? The sons of God were the descendants of Seth and all the other sons and daughters of Adam who remained faithful to God. Who are the daughters of men? These were the descendants of Cain and all the other daughters or the sons and daughters of Adam who actually turned against God. These are the two groups of people that are living on the earth during the antediluvian period. So, what can we say? Can we now simply and faithfully say the sons and of God are angels in this passage? No, the Bible does not agree. When you apply all the hermeneutical tools, you can see that it cannot be the angels. It can only be human beings. But we need to understand which kind of human being. So let us not be perplexed by the term sons of God, because sons of God does not only refer to angels, even to human beings, as I've told you in Exodus. We are told that the sons of God was also human, because God says, Israel is my son. So the sons of God in this passage are human beings who are followers, who have been following God, mainly the descendants of Seth. And you can even go to the book of John, chapter 1, verse 12. It's very simple. It tells us that those who have actually accepted Christ, they have been given the ability to be called the sons of God. So you and I can be the sons of God. As long as we allow ourselves to remain faithful to God, we are the sons of God, just like these ones that we find in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verses 1 to verse 4. Folks, if you have a question, remember to go below and put your question there. We'll attend to your question. And if you also want to follow us as we upload more videos, just go and subscribe to our channel and then press the notification bell, because every week we will be uploading a new video. With that, I can only say, be blessed. Amen.
Amen.